Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode here at Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes, the Chief Sales Sergeant of Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Here at Bulletproof Selling, our mission and our mantra has been since day one that hope is not a sales strategy. Whether you're responsible for selling products, services, initiatives, or ideas, chances are hope is creeping in a little more than you'd want it to. How do I know that? Well, I was able to work with some of the highest performing teams on the planet. Think Marine Force Recon, think Navy SEALs, think Army Green Berets. These folks are at the top of their game. They have millions of dollars of training invested in them. They're training 90% of the time for that, couple of hours worth of mission that they're running each week. They still look for where hope is entering their plan. So if they can remove hope from how they operate as part of their day-to-day operations, chances are you can do too. So since day one here at Bulletproof Selling, we've been bringing on guests, Hall of Fame speakers, best-selling authors, folks that are out there leading sales teams, and those that around the world are helping sales teams get better results by removing hope from different aspects of their sales process. And out of each one of these episodes, we build a sales system with our guests that you can use to remove hope from how you operate, how you communicate, and how you sell. Now, in all the different ways that we get to communicate in sales, you think virtual meetings, you think phone calls, you think sending even LinkedIn messages, social media messages. The thing that is still ubiquitous in the world of sales, and it's probably the bane of most people on the planet, is email. Electronic messaging. It's this thing that we send a lot of, and we have, a 0.003% response rate on it. Even I'm surprised when an email that I'm sending out as part of a sales campaign gets a response. It could get trapped in spam. It's not engaging enough. It's not customized enough, or it just gets lost among the 1,000 emails that person got that day. Well, our guest today is going to help us remove hope from a very important element of how we communicate as salespeople, which is email. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome onto the show Mr. Adam Rosen. He's the founder of Email Outreach Company, and he's going to show us how to remove hope from how we communicate in sales. Adam, welcome, sir, to Bulletproof Selling.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Adam, you are a locationally independent entrepreneur. Did I get that right? Tell us a little bit about what that means, because that sounds pretty cool to me. I think I want on board that train. Talk to us about what it looks like.
So a lot of people know the term digital nomad, although I'm not a big fan of that term digital nomad. That is the lifestyle that I've been living now for the past almost 3 years at this point, and it's very different than the life I started. My first tech startup I had for about 5 years, and I was cuddled into my Boston office, and it's a very different way of life than what I live now. But now I spend typically a few months in different locations all around the world in places that inspire me and places where I can grow my business.
Oh, that is awesome, man. And then growing your business from the tech startup to where you are today. Talk to us a little bit about your journey through sales. I know a lot of people, when they start a tech company, maybe they don't know a lot about sales. They just have a great idea, great product, great software. Talk to us about how you learned to sell and how you help salespeople today sell more, better, and differently.
Yeah, I didn't have experience with my first tech startup. I always say bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, young pup coming out of college. I started my first business 3 weeks before I graduated from my one-year MBA program I was doing at the time, and I had no experience. I've always been pretty good with people, but I never learned the true art of selling. And when I started my first company, as when I got involved in sales, and I credit my co-founder who showed me the ropes of sales, and I ended up leading the sales for my tech startup. And we got some of the biggest brands in the world as customers, from Bank of America, Amazon, Apple, Goldman Sachs, all these big brands. And we got them through cold email outreach. So I was meeting with one of the startups that I was advising after I sold that first company. And he just said to me, "Hey, man, can you meet with my head of sales? She's struggling to get meetings on the books." And I met with her, and I saw there was a gap with what they were doing from a cold email standpoint. And that's when I started my current company, Email Outreach Company, where we help companies get more sales appointments through cold emails so that they can grow their business.
And now people have told me for, I don't know, a couple of years now, at least since COVID, when nobody was in the office, nobody was going door to door anymore. So emails were getting blasted around like crazy. I've heard more than once that email is dead when it comes to sales. Disprove that statement for me, please.
I talk a lot about the old days of cold email. And I'm not talking about the old days like 2014, 2015, 2016. I'm talking about July of 2023. So much
Yeah.
has changed over the past 8, 9 months when it comes to cold email. And in terms of your question, does it work and disprove it? Well, I can tell you April and March, and May is on pace to even beat April and March. have been our best months we've had in over a year, and kind of before the golden age of cold email. So cold email can work and should work. However, it has gotten so much more complex. And we can dive into, more of the technical
Yeah.
points if you like throughout this episode, Sean. But it's gotten so much more complex where if you don't treat it as a true art and a science, and if you don't do A through Z right, you really don't stand a chance to get it, to get any results through it. However, if you do, cold email can work just about better than it ever has.
Now, your company's helped more than 20 million emails be sent. So there is something to be said for that, and you're generating revenue with it. So if I'm a salesperson, I'm either working on my own or I'm in an organization. I've got maybe a couple of templates I've been provided, but most of the sales teams I work with, those templates aren't being used or they're being heavily modified by the individual salesperson. Where does hope factor into this? And I think I'm reaching out, right? I'm making phone calls, I'm sending LinkedIn messages, I'm using email, but I'm not getting the results. Where do you see hope factoring into this? That your methodology and how we can really systemize better emails might be the solution.
Well, a lot of people underestimate email because all of us do it every day. We think, oh, I know how to email, I know how to send out an email, but we don't take into account and give email the credit it needs and it deserves if you want to get results through it. So I think a lot of times you just say, hey, I'm going to write a good piece of copy and send this email out, and I'm going to sit back, relax, and hope that the meetings come through. And just like with any marketing medium, just like with anything in life, if you do it half, if you halfway do it, you're not going to get results. You have to do A through Z right. So copy is part of it, but email is so much more than just the copy you send. For example, we track how many emails it takes to get one meeting booked. And it takes on average about 3.5, almost 4 emails to schedule one meeting. So even just the basic principle of following up and following up effectively, doing that one thing can totally adjust how many meetings you get through email.
So let's talk about building a system around this then. And it's going to really challenge, I think, your brain power because I know that emails we send at different places within the sales process, depending on if this is the first contact this person's ever had with me, or maybe we've had a meeting or a phone call. I'm trying to re-engage them. I'm trying to keep this deal on the rails. It could differ. We're going to try to build a system that addresses as much of this sales process as we can. I went in the military. Every time that we built a new system for how we operated on the battlefield, it trimmed a little more hope away that we were bringing with us. So in sales, it's the same way. And I know we're going to have a really fun time with email because I've got a bunch of questions for you on how to send email better that we're going to work into this system. So that because we're trimming hope away, we use this acronym TRIM. Now the T in TRIM is the trigger. If I'm a salesperson and I want to drive more meetings with my emails, when do I trigger this system for myself? Is it before I get ready to send an email? Is it when I'm doing research on my prospect or my client, my customer? Is it before any of that when I'm even, getting further back in the weeds with my ICP? When do you recommend that we trigger a system to generate more meetings with emails?
Before, during, and after. At all points, it should be a constant
Okay.
learning process, but it starts in the beginning. So number one is you have to create the infrastructure. So what do I mean by
Mhm.
the infrastructure? So step one of the system and the process is the infrastructure. In the old days of cold email, and by the way, you should never cold email. Anyone who's listening to this, do not mass email off your main domain. It is too risky. So in the old days, we would create one or two domains we would send from and about 3 or 4 emails that we would send from. Now, for context, we're creating anywhere from 20 domains for our customers to 60 or more domains for our customers. We're creating about 60 emails on the low end for our customers to 3 or 400 emails that we're sending from for our customers. We're setting up the DMARC settings in the background. So DMARC, DKM, SPF in the background of these domains, basically your registration stickers. So number one is you have to create that foundation. Number two, you have to figure out what tool do you use to send these emails. There's a million tools out there. The tool that we love is a tool called instantly.ai. It's not my tool. I just love it. That's where we're sending over 1 million emails every single month. So what technology are you using? That's number two in the system. Number three in the system is your ICP. So who is your ideal customer? What companies do they work at? What type of companies? What's their title? Then who are they? What problems might they be facing so that we can then write copy going into our next part of the process? What type of copy is going to engage with these folks? The system that we like to use in terms of writing our emails, and we have a free chat GPT prompt that if you guys reach out, I'll make sure it's left in the show notes that you can download it. It rewrites our highest performing emails customized for you. But the main way these emails are written in terms of purpose, problem, solution, social proof, and then what's your ask? Can I have 15 minutes of your time to chat? So what's the email copy that you're writing? Then going into that system, you have to do something called spin tax. In the old days, again, you could get away with writing one good piece of copy, sending it out, and if it hits, you could just keep running with that copy. No longer is that even good enough. So things like spin tax, which basically randomizes different words throughout your cold email to trick servers like Google and Yahoo to not think that this is a mass email. So that's all of what goes into the beginning part of the system. And then you get into the middle, you're talking about A/B testing, what messaging is working, what's getting you replies, what's getting you meetings. And then, of course, after you send the emails, after you collect the data and the results, okay, how can we test and pivot so that the next campaign can be more effective?
So is it possible then to still get success if I'm sending from a single email account with a fair idea of what my ICP is made up of and what their challenges are? Because it sounds like what you're advocating is a very technologically advanced process, which is great because that's actually what's going to drive results at scale. But let's say I'm a salesperson and I can't ask my company to stand up 60 different emails. I'm still sending from one. What are some things that I can do to get better results with the resources that most salespeople already have available?
Have to get hyper targeted, but it's important to speak to your company about the importance of creating extra domains because it is getting too risky. Where just one salesperson within a company, if you send too many emails in a day and you start to get marked as spam, now others within that domain also are at a higher risk of their emails going to spam. So a proposal to a potential client that now has a higher likelihood of going to spam. So I would talk to my company for anyone listening
Mm,
here and say, hey, we should have another domain that we're sending our mass marketing emails from. Like for us, for example, we saw when we were sending 25 emails per day per email account, our email deliverability started to drop slightly. We changed it to 20 emails per day and our email deliverability skyrocketed. So it is important to have these extra domains you're sending from. But if you can't get those extra domains or those extra emails, it's really important to be hyper personalized. Now you can either do that yourself and you can spend the time researching companies, or you can use amazing AI tools that exist out there, like a Clay.ai, for example. We use that to send personalization at scale. And I'm not talking personalization like, hey, I saw you went to this university and we have the same mascot. I love your mascot. That's not it. Or, hey, I saw you're based in New York. Have you checked out this deli in New York? It's not stuff like that. It's like I just spent 30 minutes researching your company and then sent a
mm.
highly personalized email to you. So I would recommend anyone checking out a tool like Clay.ai because if you can get great at a tool like that, it can totally change your cold email game in terms of getting results and meetings booked.
And so you mentioned something like Clay.ai, and I imagine that we would still want to then edit that down into the message. You mentioned purpose of my outreach today, the problem that we're looking to solve, the solution that we offer, and then that ask for the next step. So if I'm using a tool like AI, and I'm absolutely going to include your prompt in here. So for anybody listening to this, go to the show notes, make sure that you're getting Adam's prompt. What is if I just have access to Chat GPT today, for instance, what are some queries that I can throw in there against a company that begins to produce something that I can use around purpose, problem, solution, and ask?
Yeah, so in that tool I mentioned, Clay.ai, it has different formats to it. So part of it is you want to instruct it to do the type of research that you want. So what type of research do you want to do on each of these companies? And then you want to instruct it for what type of email, like what's your structure of your email? Because to your
Mm,
point, Sean, most people just go into Chat GPT and they say, hey, write me a cold email. This is my company. This is the problem I solve. This is the type of person I'm sending this email to. And the emails that ChatGPT is going to produce, even if you're using a ChatGPT 4, for example, are not high quality emails. A lot of them are going to
right.
start with, hi, I hope this email finds you well. They're going to
Yeah.
have a long email, 6 paragraphs. Nobody's reading that stuff. You got to be direct. You got to be short. You got to be to the point. One of the things I always talk about is details create confusion, and a confused buyer is never a buyer. That is especially important with email. And not just that's especially important when it comes to sales. And frankly, that's especially important with business in general. So you got to use the right email structure or you're not going to get results. And that's why we create the chat GPT prompts that people can take our email style and just interact it into their style, their business.
So if I've got then a better email, sequencing is something that I hear a lot of. Do you advise that we sequence emails inside of a campaign, so multiple emails sent over a period of time, or are you really just sending out emails at scale? And when you do get a response, that's when you begin to engage this person?
So our sequences typically are anywhere from 6 emails to a 9 email cadence. Again, it takes about 4 emails to get one meeting booked. And our follow-ups are very simple. They're typically about 2 to 3 sentences tops, pretty much just saying, hey, reaching out about this value prop. Are you interested in a 15-minute conversation? If not, please let me know and I'll stop reaching out. So that's the best way we found to follow up. People tend to respect it and appreciate it. So that's the method for us that works best with the follow-ups. And then once they respond, that's typically when we would send like a calendar booking link to schedule that meeting.
Gotcha. All right. So if I'm using Clay.ai to generate better emails, making sure that they have purpose, problem, solution, and then the ask for the next step in them, 6 to 9 email sequences. So I imagine that and this is something I hear a lot about. I'm curious to get your insight to create a bit of a story arc with those 6 to 9 emails so that they're not just getting the same email worded in a different way asking for the meeting. Are you advising people begin to present a little bit more around the problem that we're looking to solve here? You may not know this, but it's affecting people in your industry in these ways. What do you do in those 6 to 9 emails to make sure that they are different and people do engage with them?
We've tried it all, and a lot of what we'll
Mm,
do is we'll try things even that make ourselves uncomfortable that we don't even like as an email, but we'll try to see, hey, maybe we're wrong. Test the data, right? Let the results tell you what works and what doesn't work. And we've tried that type of follow up where we try rephrasing our email. We try to say, hey, here's a case study to check out. What we've seen work best is basically 2 to 3 sentences of the same type of email, just saying, hey, I'm here to ask you about this value prop. My main email will share more information about who we are. That's the longer email. But the follow-ups are really just supposed to say, hey, should we talk or should I stop reaching out to you? And that we've
mm,
seen has a much better response rate, and also has people responding in a more positive light, even if they're not interested, because we're
mhm.
respecting their inbox and we're just saying, please let me know if you're not interested. If you're not, I don't want to keep bothering you.
Gotcha. And then to avoid getting trapped in spam, which was one of my questions to you at the beginning, that's where setting up these multiple email addresses really come into play. So you're not blasting 80 messages out from the same URL, the same domain.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to have those
Okay.
different emails. You want to balance it out to, again, about 20 emails per day per inbox. You don't want to put any links or images in that first email. Those are things that will increase the likelihood that you end up in spam as well.
Okay. Good to know. Because I've often thought to myself, why don't I include a GIF or an image? So you're saying until you begin to get whitelisted, so to speak, because they are responding to you, avoid images in your early emails.
Yeah. It's just another
Okay.
trigger that will increase the likelihood you end up in spam.
Awesome. All right. So I've got a pretty good system built here so far. We've got the trigger, which is making sure that you do have the infrastructure in place. You've got your tools set. You've got the mode that you're going to be sending through that email platform. You've got ICP. Now, the repeatable elements of this, the R in trim, we walked through a couple of great steps there. The I in trim is making sure this is improvable. And from our conversation so far, I can tell you are I'm going to say fanatic in a good way, because I am too, a fanatic about improvement. So what are you looking for if you're that sole salesperson, you don't have that big infrastructure behind you, you're just trying to get better conversion on your emails? What are you going to be doing to improve your emails, given that you may not have all the data analytics that a company like yours could provide?
The most basic analytics that people should be looking at is not opens.
Mm,
So first with opens, the reason why I say not opens is we typically don't even track opens. The main reason why being number one, it also, believe it or not, increases the likelihood you end up in spam. And two, it is such an inaccurate measurement that there's almost no value in tracking it. So what do I mean by that? Opens so often are overcounted and undercounted. So getting a
mm,
40% open rate, it might be a 40% open or it might be a 20% open. The data just isn't accurate. So we don't even track open. So what data do we track? Replies is huge. One of the things that we do, and anyone listening to this can steal it. I just ask that if you do steal it, that you actually, or borrow it, whatever you want to call it, you actually do it.
uh-huh.
So one of the best hacks that we created is in our PS, we say, hey, if you reply to this email, we will donate 5 bowls of dog food to a dog shelter. The reason why
Mm,
is because your reply helps our email deliverability health. And like last month, for example, we donated over 20,000 bowls of dog food to a charity because of all the replies that we get. And we get such positive response now. Even people that aren't interested, they say, hey, thanks so much for donating to the dogs. I'm replying just for that. So
nice.
replies are so important because it helps your domain health so that your email deliverability increases. So replies is important. Positives,
Now,
negatives.
I'm really curious about that tactic real quick because it's brilliant. One, but I'm curious. Do you have any kind of follow up that you use to generate more conversation, like sending them a receipt of the donation to keep that conversation going? What's your next step in that particular aspect?
Good question. We probably should do more with it.
Okay.
Some people have asked, and when they ask, we'll send them a receipt, but we haven't done
Okay.
a lot of follow up. But funny enough, just a quick story on that, because when we email for our clients, we're pretending to be our client. They have no idea that we even exist.
Right.
So one of the folks that responded to the email, he was like, "Hey, I love this dog food thing." Then all of a sudden, we saw on LinkedIn, one of my team members found it. He had a post on LinkedIn for our client saying, "Hey, here was the email that this gentleman sent me. He's donating
Oh,
to dog
nice.
food." So creative, and nobody knows it came from us. They all think it was our client, but it's
Yeah.
cold email can be looked at in such a negative way. It's such a negative stereotype oftentimes, and it's like, hey, if we can at least have a little bit more goodness going into someone's inbox, I think it's also a good thing for the email world.
Oh, this is brilliant. And I'm absolutely using this, by the way. So I'm going to borrow slash steal it and I'll let you know how it goes because that's a really, really good tactic. So if I've got some ways to improve this now, the M in trim is really where we get into the nitty gritty details of measuring this. If I'm taking the time to stand this system up, even if I'm really getting into the weeds and getting different URLs together, different domain names to make sure that I get as many emails out as I can possibly get, what am I going to measure? You mentioned not measuring open rates, which is a very novel approach in the world of emails. But what am I going to measure as far as results to know that what I'm doing in email is working? Is it just counting the number of meetings generated? Is it engagement through the process? What do you really recommend I begin tracking as a salesperson to measure this system?
Does depend a little bit on the company and what the outreach is based on. But for us, our number one job for our customers, our biggest KPI is meetings booked. So for me, that's
Mm.
what's most important. Replies are important because if you get a lot of negatives, more positives, those can, of course, those are breadcrumbs to tell you the story of if it's working or not working. But most importantly for us, we got to get on calls. We've got to get on Zoom meetings. So that's the number one KPI is meetings booked. And if we're not getting meetings booked, we got to change our messaging. Maybe we have to change our ICP, but that's the number one goal. If we're not getting meetings as salespeople, that we're not making much progress.
That's amazing, sir. This is a complete end-to-end sales system for not relying on hope in sending emails, hoping those emails generate better meetings, generate meetings at all. I have some really good ways to begin following up and low cost as well, which is really interesting. Although I know your company gets to do this for a living, and I'm really curious how people get more involved with that, especially for the Clay.ai. Prompts. That's going to be really sexy for any salesperson that's tuning into this right now. How do people get connected with you deeper into your world or reach out to your company to figure out how do we make this happen for us?
Check out eocworks.com. You can reach out to me on social media. On LinkedIn, I'm just /Adam I. Rosen. On Instagram is the other social media site I'm most active. It's just at Adam I. Rosen. And my email is adam@eocworks.com. If you have any questions, please send me an email and I'm more than happy to help.
Adam, really great sales system on a topic that we could probably all do better at. So thanks so much for giving that to us today. If you are catching this on the live stream, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. And of course, if you're listening, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be found, leave us a review. Let other salespeople know even something as what we thought was as dead as email, you don't have to rely on hope anymore because you can both sell more and serve more through something as simple as email communication. Adam, thanks for giving back to the sales community today, sir. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.
Thank you for having me, Sean.